My name is Serena Mitchell. I'm 31 years old. Last Thanksgiving, my mother raised her glass in front of 14 people, family, neighbors, friends from church, and announced, "One daughter is a physician. The other one, well, she scrubs floors for a living." Everyone laughed. My sister smiled. My father stared at his plate. I didn't say a single word. I just kept refilling water glasses, because that was what they expected me to do. What they didn't know was that 3 weeks later, they would be sitting in a ballroom with 600 people watching me walk across a stage to accept an award they couldn't even pronounce. And the company I had built, the one they knew absolutely nothing about, had been serving their favorite luxury resort for 2 full years. They had just never thought to ask whose name was on the contract. This is that story. To understand what happened at that Thanksgiving table, you need to understand the Montgomery family. We grew up in a well-established neighborhood in Phoenix where the lawns were always perfectly maintained and every driveway held at least 2 vehicles. My parents bought their house in 1998 when I was 4 years old. 4 bedrooms, a pool in the backyard, the kind of home where you hosted barbecues and kept your problems neatly out of sight. My mother, Patricia, was 58. She had been an elementary school teacher for over 2 decades before retiring. She believed in 3 things: her faith, appearances, and her eldest daughter. My father, Raymond, was 62. He had spent his career as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. He was a quiet man, the kind of quiet that people often mistake for wisdom, but which is really just a long-practiced habit of avoidance. His answer to everything was, "Your mother just wants what's best for you, Serena. You know how she is." That was his response to every slight, every comparison. Every moment I was made to feel unwelcome at my own family's dinner table. And then there was my sister, Nicole. Dr. Nicole Montgomery Chambers. 34 years old. Board-certified dermatologist running a thriving cosmetic practice in North Scottsdale with 3 other physicians. Her husband, Trevor, was a real estate attorney at his own firm. They had 2 children, a 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. They lived in a home that was immaculate in every detail, with a pool that stayed heated year-round. My mother posted about Nicole on social media an average of 4 times each week. Charity galas. Updates about the grandchildren. Carefully worded announcements about Nicole's latest professional achievement or Trevor's newest business success. Her profile bio read, "Proud mother of Dr. Nicole Montgomery Chambers." That was it. Just Nicole. As if she had only one daughter. I used to scroll through my mother's profile late at night, searching for myself. In 3 years, I found one photograph. It was from Easter 2023. I was in the background, slightly out of focus, carrying a casserole dish toward the table. She hadn't even tagged me. In the living room of my parents' house, there was what my mother called the family wall. 12 framed photographs arranged in a precise grid. Nicole's wedding. Nicole's graduation from medical school. Nicole holding her firstborn for the first time. Nicole and Trevor at a charity gala, her in a red gown, him in a tuxedo. I counted once. Nicole appeared in 11 of those 12 photographs. I appeared in 1. My high school graduation photo. I was standing between my parents, wearing a cap and gown, smiling a smile that never reached my eyes. That photograph was in the bottom corner of the grid, partially hidden behind a decorative plant. Growing up, I was always Nicole's little sister. Never simply Serena. Teachers would light up when they saw my last name on their roster. "Oh, are you related to Nicole Montgomery? She was such a wonderful student." And then their expressions would shift, just slightly, when they realized I wasn't going to be wonderful in quite the same way. I was a solid student. A B+ average, honor roll, but not valedictorian. I played softball for 2 seasons before I quit. I was in the drama club but never landed a lead role. I was fine. Average. Forgettable. In a family that worshipped achievement, forgettable was indistinguishable from failure. When Nicole graduated from medical school, my parents threw a celebration for 60 guests. They reserved an entire restaurant. There was live music. My mother gave a speech that lasted 12 minutes and moved 3 people to tears. When I completed my medical assistant certification at 22, my mother said, "That's nice, honey. Can you pass the salad?" No gathering. No speech. Just salad. When Nicole purchased her first home, my parents contributed $30,000 toward the down payment. When I moved into my first apartment, a 1-bedroom unit with security bars on the windows, my mother asked whether I really needed to live alone. The message was always clear. There was Nicole. And then there was everyone else. For 5 years, I worked at Nicole's dermatology practice. It began as a favor, or at least that was how she framed it. I had just earned my certification as a medical assistant at 22, eager to prove myself, desperate to carve out some kind of place in a family that never seemed to have space for me. Nicole called me one afternoon in March 2016. There was an opening at the front desk. She'd mentioned my name to the office manager. It sounded like an opportunity. It sounded like she was reaching out, finally acknowledging me as more than an inconvenience. "I'm doing this as a favor, Serena," she said before I started. "Don't make me regret it." I didn't. For 5 years, I didn't. I arrived before anyone else. I stayed after everyone had gone. I memorized every patient's name, their allergies, their children's birthdays. I was the one who talked down anxious patients before procedures. I never called in sick. I never complained. I never once told anyone at that practice that the lead physician was my sister. I wanted to earn my place. I wanted them to see me as Serena, not as Nicole's little sister. Then came March 15, 2021. A Monday morning. I was called into the office of the practice manager, a woman named Sandra, who had a folder on her desk and an expression on her face I'd never seen before. "Serena, please sit down. We've received some concerns about your performance. Multiple concerns. We're going to have to let you go. Effective immediately." The room tilted. Concerns? From who? Sandra's eyes moved to the wall, the door, anywhere but my face. "I'm not able to discuss the specifics. HR will process your final check. You have 20 minutes to gather your belongings." 20 minutes. 5 years. Perfect attendance. Not a single complaint in my entire file. I packed my things into a cardboard box. A framed photo. A coffee mug. A small plant I'd kept on my desk for years. As I walked toward the exit, I passed Nicole's office. Her door was open. She was on the phone, laughing at something, her chair angled toward the window. She didn't look up. She didn't turn around. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a coworker named Anna, who'd been at the practice for 4 years and was the closest thing I had to a genuine friend there. "Serena, I'm so sorry. I assumed you already knew." A pause. It was Nicole. "She told Sandra you were a liability, that you made patients uncomfortable, that you had attitude problems affecting the practice's reputation." None of it was true. Anna said so directly. Everyone on the floor knew it. But Sandra wasn't going to argue with one of the physicians, especially not one of the partners. After Anna hung up, I sat in my car in a parking lot for 2 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at the steering wheel, trying to comprehend how my own sister could do this. I had no job, no usable references, and no explanation I could give my family that wouldn't sound like I was attacking their beloved Nicole. So I told them I had left because I wanted a change. Because I needed a fresh start. My mother sighed and said, "Well, I hope you find something soon. It's embarrassing when people ask what you do." That night, I called the only person I thought might actually understand. Not my mother. Not my father. Not any friend who would tell me to confront Nicole directly and make a scene. I called my Aunt Dorothy. Dorothy was my father's younger sister, 59 years old, divorced, a hairdresser of 30 years who ran a small salon in Mesa. In the Montgomery family, she was the cautionary tale, the woman my mother referenced when she wanted to remind us what failure looked like. But Dorothy was the only person in my life who asked how I was doing without already having a preferred answer ready. She picked up on the third ring. I told her everything. The termination. The phone call from Anna. The realization that my own sister had sabotaged my career to protect her reputation. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Dorothy said, "Honey, I've been the family disappointment for 30 years. You want my advice? Don't give them the satisfaction of watching you bleed. And don't give them the satisfaction of watching you heal either. Just live quietly. Build quietly. One day they'll see everything they missed." That was the day I stopped being Nicole's sister and began becoming someone else entirely. After losing my job, I had to pay rent. So I did what anyone would do in that position. I started cleaning houses. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the life I had imagined for myself at 27. But a contact of a friend knew someone in a wealthy neighborhood who needed help. And I needed income. Her name was Mrs. Calhoun, 73 years old, widowed, living alone in a large home with more rooms than she used. She paid cash, and she paid generously. For the first several months, I simply cleaned. Scrubbed surfaces. Mopped floors. Organized closets. It was quiet work, almost meditative. No one was watching me. No one was comparing me to my sister. I could disappear into the rhythm of it. But then I started noticing things. Mrs. Calhoun's home was spotless, but her life was chaotic. Unpaid bills piled on the kitchen counter. A broken door she'd been meaning to fix for months. A refrigerator filled with expired food because she couldn't track what she'd purchased. One afternoon, without being asked, I sorted her bills by due date, arranged for a repairman to fix the door, cleared out the refrigerator, and put together a grocery list. She cried. "Nobody has ever done this for me," she said. "Not even my own children." That was when something became very clear to me. Wealthy people don't simply want cleanliness. They want invisible support. They want someone who sees everything and says nothing. Someone who makes their lives run smoothly without ever making them feel dependent on anyone. I could give them exactly that. On September 12, 2022, I registered my company, Premier Concierge Solutions, LLC. The filing fee was $50. The woman at the counter asked what we did. "We make busy people's lives easier," I told her. The first year was relentless. I worked 18-hour days. I brought on 2 employees, a housekeeper I'd met through Mrs. Calhoun and a driver who was between jobs. We accepted every client we could find. Estate management. Home organization. Personal shopping. Errand coordination. If it simplified someone's life and they could afford to pay for it, we did it. By the end of 2022, we had 12 clients and monthly revenue that barely covered payroll. I came close to quitting 3 separate times. Then in April 2023, everything shifted. I received an email from a woman named Victoria Hargrove, 62 years old, widowed, and the owner of a 120-room luxury resort in the Paradise Valley area called the Meridian. Room rates started at $800 per night. Her previous housekeeping contractor had been caught in a serious scandal, employees stealing from guests, shoddy work concealed through bribes. Victoria needed a replacement. Someone discreet, trustworthy. Someone who understood that in luxury hospitality, your reputation is the only currency that genuinely matters. A mutual client had passed along my name. I met Victoria in her office on a Tuesday afternoon. She sat behind a desk studying me with the careful eyes of someone who had been deceived before. "Everyone promises discretion," she said. "What makes you different?" I thought about Nicole, about my mother, about all the years I had spent being made to feel invisible in my own family. "I've spent my entire life being overlooked," I said. "I understand what it means to make someone feel genuinely seen while remaining completely out of the way myself." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she slid a contract across the desk. I hired 8 additional employees. I built training protocols from scratch. I implemented quality control systems I'd learned from business books borrowed from the library. It worked. Victoria signed a second contract. Then she introduced me to friends of hers, the owners of 2 other prestigious local resorts. By the end of 2024, Premier Concierge Solutions held contracts with all 3. By November 2025, my company had 38 employees. We operated from a proper office in the Scottsdale Business District. Annual gross revenue was tracking toward $1.9 million. I drove a modest used car. I wore jeans and plain sweaters. I lived in a comfortable but unremarkable apartment. And whenever my mother asked what I did for work, I said, "Same as always, Mom. Just cleaning." She never asked a follow-up question. None of them did. I built something extraordinary. And I built it in complete silence. There was only one person who knew the truth. In June 2024, Aunt Dorothy called me on a Tuesday evening. "Honey, I need to ask you something. I had a client in my chair today, a woman from Paradise Valley. She spent the entire appointment talking about a concierge company she uses. Discreet, professional, absolutely transformed her life. She mentioned the owner's name. I held my breath. Serena Mitchell. That's you, isn't it?" Silence. "I nearly dropped my scissors," Dorothy said. I had to pretend I was adjusting the cape. "Please don't tell anyone," I said. "Please. I'm not ready." "Sweetheart." Her voice softened. "I won't say a word. But I need you to know, I am so incredibly proud of you." We talked for another hour. I told her everything about Premier Concierge, about Victoria, about the contracts and the employees and the sleepless nights wondering if the whole thing would collapse. Dorothy just listened. She didn't push me to tell my family. She didn't suggest I use it to embarrass Nicole. She just said, quietly, "One day they'll see." That was her promise to me. Her phrase. One day they'll see. Neither of us knew how soon that day was coming. November 27th, 2025. Thanksgiving. I drove from Scottsdale to my parents' neighborhood in 22 minutes. I wore jeans, a gray sweater, and boots I'd owned for 3 years. Nothing that would prompt questions. I brought a bottle of wine, a good one, $40, a 2019 Napa Cabernet. I already knew my mother would set it on the counter and serve Nicole's bottle instead, likely something twice as expensive, presented with a brief speech about the vineyard. I parked at the far end of the driveway. That was where I always parked. The spots closest to the house, shaded by the decorative bushes my mother spent hundreds of dollars maintaining each year, were reserved for Nicole's white luxury SUV and Trevor's black sedan. I'd been parking at the end for as long as I could remember. When I walked through the front door at 4:15 in the afternoon, the house was already full. I could hear laughter from the living room. The clink of glasses. My mother's voice, animated, telling a story I'd probably heard a dozen times. I found her in the kitchen. "Oh, Serena, you're here." She glanced at me for half a second, then turned back to the stove. "Good. Can you help with the gravy? It's starting to lump." No hug. No how are you. No I'm glad you made it. Just gravy. The guest list that Thanksgiving was 14 people. My parents. Nicole and Trevor. Their 2 children, running circles in the backyard. My mother's younger sister, Aunt Carol, and her husband. 2 women from my mother's church group. The retired couple next door. And one of Nicole's colleagues from her practice, a physician named Dr. Sandra Bates. For the first 2 hours, I was effectively invisible. I refilled water pitchers, cleared the appetizer plates, checked on the oven, rearranged the silverware after my mother said I'd done it incorrectly. 4 tasks in 2 hours. 4 requests to serve, to assist, to dissolve into the background. Not once did anyone invite me to sit down. At one point, I was passing through the living room with a serving tray when Nicole's young son tugged at my sleeve. "Aunt Serena, why are you always in the kitchen?" Before I could respond, Nicole laughed from across the room. "Because that's where she belongs," sweetheart. She said it lightly, like a joke. Something casual and throwaway. But I caught Aunt Carol's face for just a fraction of a second, a flicker of something that might have been discomfort. Then the conversation moved on and the moment was gone. At 6:47 that evening, we sat down to dinner. The table was set beautifully. White cloth. Cloth napkins folded into shapes. My mother's good china. 14 place settings arranged with careful precision. My seat was at the far end, near the kitchen door. In case anyone needed anything. My mother stood at the head of the table holding her wine glass. Cream-colored blouse. Pearl earrings. Hair freshly done that morning. She'd mentioned it 3 times. Before we eat, I'd like to say a few words. The room settled into quiet. I want to thank God for this beautiful family. For my wonderful husband Raymond, who has stood beside me for 36 years. My father nodded, visibly uncomfortable with the attention. For my grandchildren, who bring such joy into our lives. The children giggled. For my son-in-law Trevor, who takes such extraordinary care of our Nicole. Trevor raised his glass. And especially, for my daughter Nicole. A doctor. A mother. A true blessing. She paused, letting the moment breathe. I felt something cold move through my chest. I knew exactly where this was going. I had felt it building all afternoon. All year. My whole life. I am so proud of everything you've accomplished, Nicole. We all are. Nicole smiled. That practiced, perfect smile she had refined over years of knowing everyone was watching her. My mother turned. Her eyes found me. And of course, for Serena. A different pause. Heavier. I have 2 daughters. She gestured toward Nicole with her wine glass. One is a doctor. A small laugh. The kind that invites everyone in the room to join. The other one, well, she cleans houses. But at least she's very good at it. 14 people laughed. I counted. Aunt Carol's husband laughed. The church friends laughed. The retired dentist next door laughed. Nicole's colleague Dr. Bates laughed. Trevor laughed. Nicole laughed the loudest of all. My father did not laugh. He looked directly at his dinner plate. The award ceremony. December 18th. 600 people. Press coverage. Victoria nominated me. I'm going to invite them. All of them. Mom, Dad, Nicole, Trevor. They won't know who's receiving the award. A long silence. Serena, are you absolutely sure about this? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Then I will be there in the front row, Dorothy said. With bells on. For the first time in days, I actually smiled. Over the next 3 weeks, I wrote 7 drafts of my acceptance speech. The first was furious. I named names. I imagined reading their own emails back to them from a stage. The second draft was grief-soaked. The third was accusatory. The fourth was self-pitying. The fifth too long. The sixth too short. In the 7th draft, I deleted everything. Because I finally understood something. The most powerful response to people who dismissed you is not confrontation. It's becoming someone they cannot ignore. I didn't need to quote their messages or describe their cruelty in front of 600 strangers. I just needed to stand on that stage and tell my real story. The one about a woman who was terminated from her job, who started over from nothing, who built something genuine with her own hands. And let them sit in that audience and realize slowly, quietly, publicly, that the daughter they had discarded was standing in a spotlight they could never reach. The final speech was 8 minutes long. I didn't mention my family by name once. But I knew they would hear themselves in every single word. December 18th. I bought a dress. Navy blue. Simple and elegant, the kind of dress that says I belong here without needing to announce it. Aunt Dorothy came to my apartment that morning to help me prepare. You look like someone who runs something, she said. I do run something. She smiled. Yes. You do. At 6:15 that evening, my phone showed a social media notification. Nicole had posted a photo, her and Trevor in formal attire, standing in the lobby of the event venue. The caption read, "Networking evening with my husband. Grateful for this life." They were already there. They had no idea. I arrived through the speaker entrance at 6:30. Victoria met me backstage in a silver gown, beaming. "Are you ready?" I looked through the gap in the curtain. The ballroom was filling. Business leaders, local officials, journalists with cameras, round tables draped in white cloth topped with desert wildflower centerpieces. And there, at table 14, I almost smiled at the number, sat my parents, Nicole and Trevor. My mother was in a burgundy dress. My father in a suit he'd probably owned for a decade. Nicole in emerald green. Trevor in a tailored jacket. All four of them laughing, sipping champagne, completely unaware of what was about to happen. "I've been ready for 3 years," I said. The program began at 7. Awards. Sponsor recognition. Video presentations. I barely registered any of it. I was watching table 14. Watching my mother lean over to whisper something to Nicole. Watching Trevor check his phone beneath the tablecloth. Watching my father look around the room with the vague discomfort of a man who doesn't quite understand why he's there. At 7:45, the evening's host stepped to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present the highlight of tonight's program, the Arizona Rising Entrepreneur Award." The ballroom went still. This award recognizes a business leader who has demonstrated exceptional innovation, growth, and community impact. This year's recipient built something truly remarkable. Premier Concierge Solutions was founded just 3 years ago with 1 employee and a vision. Today it employs 38 people, serves 3 of Arizona's most distinguished luxury properties, and this year generated nearly $2 million in revenue. A murmur moved through the crowd. The sound of genuine recognition. The founder started from nothing. She faced setbacks. She faced doubt. She faced people who told her, directly, that she would never amount to anything. He paused. "Tonight we prove them wrong. Please welcome to the stage, Serena Mitchell." I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath before I had even stepped into the light. The curtain parted. The spotlight found me. I walked across that stage with 600 people watching, including the 4 who had spent my entire life treating me like I didn't matter. I didn't look at their table. Not yet. I reached the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I looked out at the room, at strangers mostly, but also Victoria in the front row, and Aunt Dorothy beside her, pressing a tissue to her eyes. And at table 14, for completely still figures, I began. "Thank you to the Southwest Business Council for this honor. I want to tell you a story, a true one, about a woman who, 4 years ago, had absolutely nothing." My voice was steady. The voice of someone who had rehearsed until the words felt like breathing. In 2021, I lost my job. I had $3,200 in debt, no usable references, and no plan. I was 27 years old, and I had no idea what came next. I watched my mother shift in her seat. So I started cleaning houses. Not because I wanted to, because I needed to survive. Because I needed to pay rent. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, I discovered something I hadn't expected. A pause. I discovered I was actually good at it. Not just at cleaning, at seeing what people needed. At making their lives flow more smoothly. At being invisible in a way that made the people around me feel more visible. I let the word sit in the air. Invisible. I built this company with my own hands. I started with 1 client, then 5, then many more. I made mistakes. I worked days that didn't end. I questioned myself more times than I can count. I looked directly at table 14, and there were people who were supposed to love me, who told me I would never amount to anything. I watched Nicole's face go pale. People who called me an embarrassment. My mother's hand rose slowly to her mouth. People who excluded me from their lives because they were ashamed to be associated with me. My father closed his eyes. To those people, I want to say something. The room was absolutely silent. Thank you. 600 people waited. You gave me the greatest possible gift. You gave me a reason to prove you wrong. I paused. Let it land. About family expectations. About the wounds that high-functioning people spend years learning to work around. Sandra became one of my closest friends. Strange, how the people who initially hurt you can sometimes lead you to the people who genuinely heal you. If you're still watching this, I want to tell you something important. This story is not about revenge. It's not about proving people wrong or watching them suffer or claiming some final dramatic victory. That might feel satisfying for a brief moment. But it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't heal anything. This story is about freedom. For 31 years, I waited for my family to see me. I waited for my mother to be proud of something I had done entirely on my own. I waited for my father to stand up for me. I waited for my sister to treat me like an equal rather than an inconvenience. I waited, and waited, and waited, and they didn't. But here is what I finally understood. I don't need their permission to exist. I don't need their approval to succeed. And I don't need their acknowledgement to know that I am worthy of all of it. The gala wasn't about humiliating my family. It was about stepping into the light. About letting the truth speak for itself without my help. About standing on a stage in front of 600 people and claiming the success I had built with my own 2 hands. Whether my family acknowledged it or not. They saw me that night. For the first time in my life, they genuinely saw me. But by that point, it had already stopped mattering. Because I had finally, fully learned to see myself. If you're watching this and you recognize your own story and mine, if you are the other one in your family, the one who gets overlooked, the one they underestimate, the one they introduce as the cautionary tale, I want you to know something. You don't have to prove anything to them. You don't have to wait for them to change. You just have to build. Quietly. Steadily. One day at a time. And when you're ready, step into the light. They'll see you then. But by that point, it won't matter. Because you'll already see yourself. I am not the embarrassment. I never was. And I never will be again.